Hello, lovely. Welcome to the Find a Lovely Life podcast, a safe place for all self love journeys. I'm your host, Monica Rodriguez, and for the past 7 years, I've been on a mission to learn how to love myself. Healing can be a really lonely journey, especially when you don't know where to start. So let's figure things out, cherish words that guide us, and of course, I'll share some of my lovely life lessons along the way. If you're looking for inspirational stories, conversations with some lovely souls, and a little life advice, I think you found the right place. Or maybe it found you. Let's try our best and find a lovely life together. Well, hello, lovely. Welcome to episode 5. The number 5. I'm going to start doing this now every time we hit a new number, a new episode. 5 means change, the unknown, transformation. And it's interesting because we've entered sort of the 6-month mark of the year, almost halfway of season 1 of this lovely podcast venture. If you've been with us since the beginning, another shout out of gratitude to you. And if you're just discovering this for the first time and it found you, welcome. I can't believe we're already in June, which means the second half of the year is upon us. And something that I think I have embedded in my self love journey practice is allowing myself to check in with the direction of my life, with my life goals, with my journey, career, relationships, kind of like doing inventory checks seasonally. So, spring, summer, fall, winter, we're about to enter summer. And I've been taking sort of like an inventory of what are the things in my life that I want sort of illuminated, like literally putting a flashlight on them because I haven't. Um, I've been either abandoning it or putting it behind a tablecloth so I don't see it, and then it kind of spooks me because I think it's a ghost, and then it ends up being a ghost or something that I have to work through. But using sort of the midway point to take action towards new adventures, new goals that you might want to set, some old ones, or maybe the ones that you set at the beginning of the year just aren't serving you anymore. And I think a great time to do that is right when summer starts. I like to think of summer as sort of like, you know, seasonally, you've planted a lot of seeds. Spring sort of like bloomed into like a new season and from a dormant winter. And summer is now sort of like the time to like enjoy that in preparation for the harvest ahead. And everybody's in a different point in their journey, but sometimes anchoring yourself to seasons can help you kind of like pinpoint where exactly you are. And it reminds me that it's not forever. I think for me, I'm really I've been leaning a lot into flow and really just if I feel like being creative, not questioning it and just doing it. And I feel like the voice of my imposter syndrome is getting quieter and quieter, which can sometimes girl boss me a little bit too close to the sun and to new opportunities and new creative things that I have never done before, but I've always wanted to do. And so inviting you to kind of like lean into that energy as well, as the sun just kind of like is the biggest symbol for summer in that sense. And like Jude has entered the chat. I think summer also provides an opportunity to kind of release old narratives or letting go of just like old stories or old ways that we've defined ourselves and opening ourselves up to taking action towards restarting or moving forward on something. Early on in my self-love journey, I'm a big like words person as I've shared, as we've grown to know each other more and more. And I like defining things. I use definition of words to kind of help me as like little breadcrumbs to certain things that I'm trying to figure out. One of the first words that I kind of played around with uh, defining self love as action, as intent. Um, and the word literally defines itself as the fact or process of doing something, typically to achieve an aim. And so I think a lot of what self love means is you taking initiative to embark on this process of change. And in order to have that sort of movement take flight, you have to light the match yourself, which can be scary and really intimidating. And maybe some of us should not play with fire and set off smoke alarms. But I digress. Bringing it back. I think it's important to sometimes, like we talked about in the first episode, tie words to anchor your self-love journey and using those words, like the word action, to take aim towards a new path that maybe you've been walking these past 6 months in your self-love journey and kind of just like waiting for that spark to like activate. And I think it's important to allow yourself to restart or try again without shame or embarrassment, and just radical self-acceptance in pursuing something that really prioritizes your joy and your fulfillment in life. And when it comes to kind of like action, I remember writing something back in 2019 of like just realizing that self-love is more than a self-care mask, sometimes more than a bubble bath. There might be times where self-care is really important, and that phase of your journey is super a really big foundation to helping you kind of like go into the next chapter of your self-love journey, which could then transform into actionable things to kind of make life changes. So once you kind of like create a safe environment for yourself, you're able to open yourself up to action and change. And one of the things that I found, or the tools that I found really helped me kind of like dive into that is literally just making a list. Like, what were the things that I wanted to do? And it could be anything from like creative to career to like, I want to learn how to make pasta. Like, it doesn't need to have such like giant meaning behind it. It's a list that kind of kickstarts your journey towards actionable things that you can use to create a life that you love. And I often describe self-love as like it's a noun, but it's also a verb because there's so much doing that comes with it and so much transformation, and it's not going to look the same for everyone, and it's not going to look the same. Maybe there's a really comfortable self-love ritual that you've had that all of a sudden isn't serving you in the same way. I remember when I first started implementing dating myself as part of my self-love journey, like 6, 7 years ago, going to the movies was like my self-love date. I would go and I had like this was back in the days of Movie Pass, if ever anyone remembers Movie Pass. And I tried a couple other like subscriptions that really helped. And I would go to the movies by myself, and it was a place that it was easy for me to dedicate dating myself with something that I liked. So I paired something that I liked with a actionable thing to get me to go date myself in a way that I felt safe. And after the pandemic, I did that for like a true commitment to it, and it was hard at first, and it slowly started became something that I really looked forward to doing. And then after the pandemic, I tried replicating that same sort of like self-love practice and was talking to my therapist about it of how surprised I was that I didn't feel like I liked it anymore. And it was scary because there was a part of me that like anchored herself in this self-love date for so long. And I was a completely different person than I had been before the pandemic. And so I remember her talking to me about like honoring those versions of yourself and knowing that that's still something that you may have loved, but now you are able to have so much more room to love yourself in so many different ways that sometimes if we put all of our self-love eggs in one basket, the more that we grow and the more that we learn about ourselves, we like to kind of do things, different things, and new adventures and new ways to fulfill that need for self-love and self-enjoyment. And all of these are actionable steps to help you to continue to figure out what you love. And it can be probably a little bit of a grieving process when you're sort of letting go of like a really established routine that you really loved, to show yourself love. And it doesn't mean that you can't not do that, but maybe it's not as often as you did. And it's sort of this beautiful transition into realizing I want to love myself in a different way, which brings me to the word change, because I often use that word to describe self-love, and it's to alter or modify. And then there's replace something with something else, especially something of the same kind that is newer or better, or substituting one thing for another. So literally in that like self-love date example, there might be a time where you're kind of feeling that transition into replacing something and it might be hard to let go. But change could also be sort of an act of making or becoming something different. And a lot of times when we are finally get into that point where we feel like we've achieved this safe, comfortable hermit mode of self-love, we get to a point where we're kind of like itching, or the universe will send us opportunities to kind of open us up to growth a little bit more. And it can feel a little uncomfortable, especially when we're just kind of like been in this nice, safe, self-love little bubble bath that we've created for ourselves as a metaphor. But I want to, as someone that has been through many chapters of this in her self-love journey, if you're kind of in that in-between space of like transitioning into a new sort of form of self-love, I want to invite you to open the door and walk through it. And you can leave the other door open. You don't have to close it. Just allow yourself to experience a different form of self-love that you might have not been ready for, or something else on your list that you've always wanted to do. If the opportunity presents itself to you, it's okay to um, entertain other things to help you continue to grow and love yourself in new ways. And self-love can be, doesn't have to be like a thing, or necessarily it could be as simple as changing your mind about something, allowing yourself to have a decision, gathering more information about it, and then realizing that that's not something that you actually want. And that's okay too. It might be developing a habit, that you've been wanting to either get rid of or audit a little bit to make room for growth in other ways. So it could be an act of taking charge to changing that habit. Maybe you're kind of at a point where your mindset might not be allowing you to think about other opportunities for you in your self love journey. And so maybe writing yourself a letter or talking to yourself as a friend, talking to a past version of you to kind of feel safe to change your perception about something, about approaching something, could help you take action into the next step of your self love journey. And if you're feeling stuck, like maybe I'm a little too comfortable, maybe this space is just not fulfilling me in the same way as it used to, and I want to do something different, but I don't want to change the thing. Maybe it's just how you approach the thing. So, like, changing your perspective is still change, is still taking action. It's not necessarily ripping everything out and like not starting over. You have those foundations that you built on. And to continue building forward, I think taking action towards um, change in different ways can continue to not make the self love journey feel so mundane. Sometimes I think we kind of get in those like periods where it feels like you mastered something and then you're kind of starting to get bored, and then you're like, oh my God, what is happening? And you can't quite put your finger on it. And I think that moment is just like a tease into you intuitively saying, I think it's time to take action, or I think I kind of crave a change. I might be afraid of change, but I think I crave a change. And following that intent or setting that intention to kind of flow into that change will help kind of just broaden and expand your self love journey into multiple doors that will be able to, that you can go into different kind of like different party rooms in a house and say, oh, I really feel like loving myself in this way, or I think it's time to kind of figure out how else I can love myself. But I kind of miss going back to the movies. And so, like, you have that avenue to kind of multiple anchors to help you continue to make you feel safe as you continue to heal, as you continue to try new things, as you continue to share your experiences with strangers or people that you love that you haven't really been as open with your self-love journey. I think all of that is part of it and is what makes your journey unique and beautiful. And I think sometimes when we work really hard to try something new or take an action that we've never done before, it can feel like you don't really have a blueprint. And if you're someone that needs some sort of structure, I think that's where connecting the mind to the physical and like pen and paper and like writing something down really does help connect that. A lot of times your self-love journey might rotate in this triangle of like, okay, my mental health, how I'm talking to myself, and then the next point of the triangle is like my emotional well-being, that really dense, like healing, digging deep into the self-love thing. And then it's more of like the external physical sense of maybe I want to start working out more. Maybe I want to sync my cycle, my menstrual cycle for those who bleed, to be more intentional with the way that I live my life and connect my body with my emotional. Like there's different ways to kind of like find things that can check all 3 points on the triangle. And there might be seasons where you feel like I really need to focus on the physical aspect. And it doesn't mean that you're abandoning mental or emotional. You're just prioritizing that part of the triangle. And sometimes they'll just kind of like bleed into each other and be like mark time, music conductor, and be your own beautiful symphony of self-love. And I think using that as like a reference point to figure out, okay, maybe I'm feeling like I've done a lot of shadow work, a lot of healing. I really need to get out of this like healing cycle. Which path do I want to take? mental feels like I'm still gonna be connected to that. I need to kind of get outside and like apply everything that I've been learning. Maybe I'll try maybe I'll go to a class, maybe I'll expose myself to meeting new people to have that be a mirror exercise and reflection of how much growth I've actually done, which will then even increase your confidence. At least in my experience, in terms of like trying new things and being more open to sharing parts of your journey, and realize how much growth you've done and how far that you've come. And sometimes we are presented with new opportunities that we didn't think of. So that could be a new job, that could be a new relationship, that could, for me, at what point in my life last year, it was a mentorship program. And one of the first things they had us do was write down our goals. And it had been a long time since I had even thought about career goals in the sense where I had to actually put intent and action behind it. And I met my mentor and realized very quickly that I was thinking too small and was talking to my therapist about it. And we sort of discovered what other areas of my life outside of career were attaching themselves to that trait of uh, accepting bare minimum, and how much of that mindset just continued to bleed into different areas of my life. And so I think that's why it's so important to open yourself up to new opportunities, where people can point out things that you don't always see. And I think that's why connection and relationships as human beings is so important, because you can always continue to love yourself and grow. But when you put yourself up against another potential mirror that's reflecting back to you something that you thought you might have healed, it can be triggering, but at the same time, it can be the key to like completely helping you unravel this like giant web of trauma that you had no idea was like hiding behind door number three. And I think the right people that help, that are really supportive, very patient, very kind to like allowing yourself or giving you the space to like continue to learn about yourself and continuing to process the things that um, you might feel, you know, continuing to process the things you might not have all the answers to right away, like we talked about last episode with the puzzle analogy. I think so there's a period of self-love where it's so important to do that work on your own. And then there comes a time where it's important to include other people in that journey so they can continue to further your growth. And that in itself is taking action towards continuing to love yourself in different ways. And I'm really excited for y'all to meet my mentor, James McGowan, who I serendipitously was paired with. We both were author agents, so shared a lot of that like balance between the two worlds. And he's grown to be one of my biggest supportive friends and sort of taught me the difference between sort of the balance of having those setting those goals, but then actually doing actionable steps to move forward and continue that growth, which has been an instrumental skill in my self-love journey outside of career as well, in terms of figuring out if I really want something, what are things that I can do that will help me get to that point. And so I'm really excited for you to hear some of his wisdom, and hopefully our conversation um, makes something click or you just enjoy it. The actionable step is to figure out how you can apply it to your self-love journey. And the goal is to just um, learn and listen to a different perspective to help water your own. Hi, James. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm so excited to talk to you. We've
Again.
again. We are pretty much in constant communication at this point, which is great. You're always like super supportive. And when I was thinking sort of like about this episode and like talking about taking action towards something, specifically with self-love, I was like, who do I know that like is super action driven? And I was like, James. James would be the perfect person to talk about this. But before I get ahead of myself, why don't you tell us something that you love about yourself?
Yeah, that's a hard question. And I've had time to think about it.
I
This is still a hard question.
know. I can
Um,
help you. You can ask for a lifeline if you need one.
I think probably what I love most is the drive. Like,
Mhm,
no matter what it is, there's a certain level of drive to accomplish
mhm,
the thing or finish the thing and get something done in the best way possible. Or if I'm doing something already, to keep doing it better. Like
mhm.
that constant, it's sometimes exhausting goal of self-improvement.
But that's something that I really love about you too, is it's contagious. Like your sense of drive and purpose and like wanting to kind of amplify that to help other people also believe in themselves to have that same drive, I think is really important when it comes to kind of like self-love. And it's a radical form of self-love because you have to like bet on yourself constantly. And with betting on yourself comes with a lot of rejection. So that's never easy. What's been your word of the year and sort of like why did you choose it?
Yeah, actually, it kind of ties right into that too. Well, I'm a chronic overworker,
Mhm.
workaholic, whatever. So this year I picked balance to try and find balance in work and life, but also like the type of work I'm doing because we have the kind of job where we get to pick who we work with and what we work on. So
Mhm,
trying to find balance in the type of work I'm doing and the projects I'm taking on, or in like things as normal as the diet and the fitness
mhm,
and the
mhm,
going out versus staying in, all of it, trying to find a better
mhm,
balance between everything of like me and the world, which is not an easy thing to
mhm,
do. And I think especially since we've started working from home, COVID, all that fun stuff, balance has been off kilter in every regard
mhm.
for everyone. So trying to restore that a little bit.
Yeah, I remember you sending me this YouTube video at the beginning of the year, and I'll put a link to it below once I find it again. But it was sort of somebody talking about like a chart and like balancing your life in that way. Um, I actually have not gone back to it. So maybe this is a great time to like reevaluate 6 months into the year
Yeah,
how
I
that's
forgot the entire exercise too, but
we were just
it's
talking
six
about
months
it.
ago.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and then it was like, oh, I just thought about it again and was like, wait a minute, that was really helpful. We were like gung ho January, and now all of a sudden it's June, and I just thought that would be a great time to because the great thing about balance is like,
I think it was the Ali Abdal video, right?
yes, I
Okay.
believe
Yeah.
so. So I'll either ask you for that again, but I'll put it in the description of the video so everyone can take a look. But I really like how he was just kind of explaining, and to your point, like not just work, but like other like if you envision like a pie chart, like there's different parts of your life and making sure balance comes with like we hear the term work-life balance a lot. And I am also a chronic overworker and tend to kind of like the scale immediately like it's almost like it launches me like to a complete burnout immediately. And so like always
And we
trying to
have an
balance
input
that.
output kind of job, like what we put in, we
Yes,
get out. So I think it's really hard to turn that off sometimes and feel not guilty turning that off, which is also something you have to balance too.
that's very true. I should mention, James is actually my mentor. And I'll put the link for this at the description as well. But Literary Agents of Change, shout out to them for pairing us because when we first met, we were literally like, wait, this is kind of perfect. We have the same pain points and how we need to kind of make sure that we balance our workload, but also like make sure that we're still driven. And I think I owe my career to you, and you'll always deny that, but I will
Yes,
say
because I rebuke that.
I owe my drive and my sense of like
No,
redefining purpose to the tools that you shared with me to help me kind of alchemize it as my own.
I think they're like an
Asterisk.
acknowledgement in the back of the book. They're not indebted at all. I think you either have it or you don't. I don't think someone can
I,
make you have that.
well, what if someone feels like they don't have that? How would you kind of like encourage them to kind of find that within themselves?
I think it just depends on what you're doing. If you don't have that for the thing you're doing, there's probably a reason why.
Mm, that's true.
Yeah, so like
Um,
maybe you're doing the wrong thing.
in that sort of like same vein, if someone was kind of like really frustrated and sort of the place that they were at in their life and career and like any part of like the pie chart balance, what would be a good first step to start creating a life that you actually love that kind of points you in that direction of purpose?
Yeah, I think we did this when we first started working together was the goals thing. And I mean,
Yes.
everybody comes back to goals, but I don't think goals are the most important thing. I think
Yeah.
they're just the goals are a good place to start for figuring it out. And I think goals are
Mm-hmm.
meant to change and meant to be
Mm-hmm.
silly or outrageous or not realistic. Like they're meant to be all of those things wrapped in one, I
Mm-hmm.
think, because it's not really about the goals, it's the steps you take to get there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think when we first started working together, that was like you set some goals and they were really realistic, like very doable, very rational. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, but no, go a little further. Like,
Yeah, yeah. I remember that exercise. I remember getting that, starting the mentorship program with, and that was like the first exercise was just kind of like, what are your 5-year goals, 10-year goals? And that was the first time I was like really having to think about it in that sense. And you could apply that same sort of like goal structure, not just career, but like the health and fitness, like relationship goals, like
everything. Yeah.
everything in life. And so specifically through our sort of uh relationship, it started kind of like work related. And so I was kind of thinking small because I didn't know how to think big. And I think the gap between like having a goal and sort of like what you said about the action points, I think was the biggest like epiphany moment for me to kind of start taking action towards those. So, what is the main difference about like making goals and like action steps towards those goals?
Yeah. So first of all, take a shot every time I say balance in this. It's just now that you brought it up.
Cheers.
But I think your goals are about finding balance between small and big, like
hmm
reasonable and rational and easily attainable versus also not. So like
hmm
I want to do this thing, but I want to do it in this way. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
a goal can't be I want to hit the lottery because it's not rational. Like not even a
right.
little. You can play the lotto every day, but it doesn't mean you're going to win. I think you have to do something that's like within your grasp, but maybe like a little out of your reach, which is how
hmm
we approached it, at least on our work side. That's
Yeah,
how
yeah,
we
yeah.
approach things of like, okay, you want to, for us, sell a book, but maybe
Right.
you want to sell five, and
hmm
that's reasonable.
Right.
Like you can do that, but then work backwards from that. So you have this goal of
Mm-hmm.
selling 5 books, which not to be all work related, but
hmm
what do you have to do in order to sell those 5 books? You
Right.
have this goal of losing 15 pounds, but what do you have to do to lose those 15 pounds? You
hmm
have to change the way you eat. You have to go to the gym 5 times a week. You have to sleep better. You have to drink more water. You have to journal out all of the stuff in your brain, maybe.
Right.
I think there are things that you have to do in order to hit every goal. And that's the difference between goal an action plan. The goal is the thing that you want to achieve, you want to get, you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
at least at this point or the point that you write them. But the action plans are the things you have to then do in order to get there. Anybody can make a goal, but if you're not going
Mm-hmm.
to change your habits and behavior to reach them, you might as well just not set a goal.
Mm-hmm. And something else you said that I really like too, that I've kind of learned throughout like that process of like setting a realistic goal that challenged you, but was also like within reach, like that kind of like in between space
Balance.
balance. Cheers. That balance between that is like a very important, I think, part of the formula and releasing control of like I remember there were times like 6 months into a goal or even like 4 months into a goal, we would revisit it and then you would be like, is this even working for you still? But I had this like misconception about goals or like previous programming that like even if I didn't even want that as a goal anymore, I still had to somehow achieve it. And you kind of, it's not the easiest thing because I'm a perfectionist too at times and I feel like I need to like check the box, but even just saying like, does this bring you joy anymore? No. Okay, well then let's make a new goal. And like allowing yourself to make new goals, especially like if at the beginning you make a goal and then you're like, this is not actually bringing me joy, which is another sense of like self-discovery and not taking action towards achieving that.
Yeah, I read years ago, I don't even remember when it came out, but Shonda Rhimes wrote a book called The Year of Yes. Have you ever read it?
Yes, it's on my shelf. Yeah, it's one of my
Okay. I mean,
favorites.
that's the best example for it. Like she
Yeah.
spent the whole year saying yes to all of the things that she would normally
Hmm.
say no to. And then at the end of the year, she was like, I am tired. Like
Yeah.
that was a lot. And I think that's normal. I think
Yeah.
that's 100% normal. Like you're always going to change. And when you do something for 3 months, 6 months, a year, you become
Hmm.
a different person, or at least
Hmm.
part of a different person. So your goals have to change. They don't necessarily have to get bigger either, which I think is
Right.
a really annoying misconception. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes your goal could be to just stay the course or maybe do less
Yeah.
of a thing. I think everybody makes goals to add and not to subtract. And then we're just
Mm.
tired individuals.
Yeah. We're not like robots trying to like overperform, even though sometimes it feels that way. But I also like the idea of like, oh, there was a time where like we were also kind of like you would point out I had goals of like routine thing to kind of like goals that related to like making sure they were now a part of my routine. And then I would get to a certain point where I didn't realize that they were. And then you would point out like, oh, this is no longer a girl, the goal, this is now a habit.
Yeah.
So what has that sort of like process been for you in terms of like self-growth and self-development, like turning goals into habits?
Yeah, I am a minimalist at heart. Like you wouldn't know it by the bookshelves behind me, but I don't have a lot of things. I don't want to like think a lot of thoughts. Like I want minimal. It makes me feel less stressed. It makes
Yeah.
me feel more in control. Armchair therapize that how you will, but I don't like having 100 goals. It
Yeah.
freaks me out and I shut down. So for me, if I set 5 goals throughout the year, every
Yeah.
quarter I might take one off. I'm like, oh, I make my bed every morning. That doesn't
Right.
have to be written down and stressing me out about a thing I
Yeah.
have to do. It's just, it's like hardwired into me. I wake up and I make the bed and I feel better, right? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a good goal, by the way. And
Mm-hmm.
getting up and making your bed in the morning is a great goal. But I think doing that kind of cleanse and clearing out the noise so that you can focus on the
Mm.
stuff that you know you still want or have to achieve is really important. And I mean, sometimes you're gonna like relapse a little bit, like,
Yeah,
"Ah, I didn't make
yeah.
my bed for a week." But you don't have to then put it back on the list. And it
Mm.
just gets overwhelming when you're
Yeah.
constantly looking at this list of things you need to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I prune them all the time. And I think we did that for your working habits too, especially
Mm-hmm.
as you were like setting yourself up and,
Yeah.
and learning the job because
Yeah.
you were a huge learning curve. You had to take the stuff off that you were like, oh yeah, that's just the job and I do it and I know how to,
Right. Right.
because otherwise you're looking at this list of 20 goals and it's like, yeah, check my email, obviously. Like that's like it becomes the kind of thing where like
Right.
I have
Right.
made this in and I know we'll talk about it at some point, but I'm obsessed with the
Hmm.
book Atomic Habits.
Yeah,
And
go
James
ahead.
Clear calls them systems, and
Hmm.
it's become part of your system. You don't need it to be
Yes.
a goal anymore.
Yeah. Well, on that note, you had brought up, you'd recommended me reading the book when we started working together, Atomic Habits. So, how did you discover it, and like, what about it do you think is like, besides what you just said, like that point of, because I think if I remember correctly, you read this
I
every
read it
year,
every year.
right?
And I never reread books.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever reread another book besides that. Like I don't do it.
Hmm.
Unless I'm like catching up on a series. I don't have
Right,
I
right.
think there's too many books out there for me to start
I
reading.
know, I know.
But my boss recommended that book to me literally right after it came out. She read it,
Hmm.
she sent it to me. She's like, "You would love this," back when we were still in office. And I did love it.
Hmm.
And I think the thing about self-help books is that, or personal development, whatever you want to call it, it's not there, nothing is ever new. There's no new
Hmm.
approach. There's like everybody has come up with this at some point, right? Like
Yeah.
there's 100 other books on the market. I think it's just about the delivery and the
Hmm.
voice and the tone and the message and the way it's packaged. And for some reason, that's the one that like light bulb went off in my head for me.
Hmm.
So yeah, I read it usually every January. I reread it. There's
Hmm.
so much in there, so much in there. Every chapter has a ton in there about habit forming, habit
Hmm.
stacking, getting rid of habits. Like it is worth the read. It is not the only habit book on the market. If you don't
Right.
love the voice or the tone or the way the message
Hmm.
is packaged, find another one. But I think those theories and practices about building or breaking habits are like the building blocks of the way our brains work.
Hmm.
I think everybody should understand them.
Yeah, I think I agree with that with like self-help books because I feel, to me, I feel like what the market really is like taking different ways of explaining the same thing because
Yeah.
everybody learns differently. And this book sort of like names things in different ways. And the more that you read different books about self-help, you might find things that resonate or like kind of like cherry pick methods that work for you and
Mhm.
like put together like your own system. And I remember, well, I was reading that book as we were in the mentorship program, and I was like, oh, that's what James meant. So I felt like I was reading your own mentorship, even though
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably stole most of it from there.
no,
But
but you made it
also,
your own
I
too.
think that's the point of it too. Like, I
Exactly.
think the point of it is that at some point you don't realize that it's
Part
somebody
of your
else's voice
system.
in your,
Yeah,
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 you don't
yeah.
realize it's somebody else's voice in your head either. Like,
Hmm.
it's just the thing that becomes part of your system. Yeah.
Yeah. What is one thing that's bringing you joy right now?
The weather. So I'll share this. One of my goals this year was to leave the house more, especially
Mm,
working from home.
yes.
And being an introvert, I
Hmm.
don't like leaving my house. But I made it a goal to leave my house to pull the Shonda Rhimes of it all and like say
Yeah, yeah.
yes to things I don't want to say yes to and all of that. Um, and I used to hate summer, and I'm like, I kind of like the sun and the heat right now. Like it's
Yeah.
the nicer weather, getting outside, the seasonal
Hmm.
depression is gone. So yeah, the weather. I'm gonna say the weather is bringing me joy. The pool is open,
Hmm.
getting out of the house, leaving the desk, leaving the email behind, which is something I'm really not good at, but I've been
Yeah.
disconnecting from a little bit more.
Hmm.
That was a lie, probably. But in my head, I think I'm
I'll give you
disconnecting.
credit. I think you have. I think you have been trying.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I wish I was better at it, but that's a goal.
that's another goal. And that's an example of like, going back to like your point about like goals being so big, like that is your goals can be as simple as I want to make my bed every morning, something that brings you fulfillment in a different way. Like I want to get outside more, and that's enough. Like I think sometimes we feel like you said, we have to just climb Mount Everest every time we make a goal, and it's
One year,
not.
one of my goals was to stop saying just. Like, and that was my goal. 1 year and a really huge goal. Stop biting my nails was a goal 1 year. And that's not easy to do.
That's not easy to do. That's very true.
And those
But
little self-improvement things, I think, go a long way.
Yes, because there's small acts of self-love. Like anything that you put intention or action behind the goal, I think is a radical form of self-love. And I think people forget that. Like anytime you prioritize yourself, anytime you want to do something for yourself that's going to bring you light and joy and make your life better, that's actually practicing self-love. And it doesn't always have to be like a huge emotional deep dive sort of
Yeah.
thing. It can be something small, and there can be a season of your life that you feel like this is where I'm at right now, and that's still part of a self-love journey. It's not any less than a year that you had a complete life change and sh change jobs and like relationships. Like it's still part of the journey. And in that sense, is there something or a tool that's helped you kind of learn how to love yourself more?
Two. Okay, so the first one is like the most obvious, the journal.
Yeah,
I
journal,
never,
journal.
yeah, I never used to do it. I never had the patience for it, but real journal fan over there.
I am.
But I think that really is like it's like a cheat code.
Mhm.
It really is like a cheat code. And it doesn't even have to be that serious either. Like a sentence,
Mm-mm.
a paragraph, half a page, like whatever you have
Mhm.
time for, when you have the time for it, or when you feel like you need to do it, that goes such a long way.
Mhm.
And like also getting rid of the idea of feeling like someone's gonna read it.
Oh my gosh, which is huge. It's a really
Oh,
big
that is
it's
awful.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do. But once you get
It's
rid of that
not.
feeling, I think nobody cares. But also there's like I learned on TikTok.
Hmm.
That's probably another goal I should take on, get off TikTok.
No,
But
don't get off TikTok. I am advocate of
you
journaling and
should see
TikTok.
my screen
No,
time.
no, it's okay.
Um,
Good goal. That's a good goal. That's a good goal.
but Scribble, have you ever heard of Scribble journaling?
I think
Where
so,
like in
but
your
explain
head you're
it.
saying what you want to say, but
Okay.
you're just literally scribbling with the pen. So nobody's ever.
Okay.
So if you have something you really
Ah, I
don't
like
ever
that.
want, yeah, like you can't even conceive of writing it, which
Right.
some people I'm sure have that. Scribble it. And in your head, you're like working
Hmm.
through the thought and processing it. But your pen is just kind of
Mm.
like making loops and squirrels and
Yeah, I have done that. That's a good tool. I don't And it's a good thing to kind of like offset, like you said, like if you're worried about someone reading your journal, and getting over that like huge, like imposter that's like standing behind your
yeah.
shoulder, which is probably a version of you, um, scribbling and saying stuff out loud. I think journaling has been such a great, even when I was like starting to journal, I felt that sort of like shame and like embarrassment about it too. And
Yeah.
sometimes I would just use it to like talk out or like write out my to-do list of like, okay, today I need to
I
do
do it all
this
the
and
time.
this, and then I need to do this. And even that was just kind of like a coping mechanism of like, if I felt really overwhelmed about the day, it was like talking to
The brain
myself.
dump.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't always have to be like emotional processing, which the journal can be like a tool for that as well, but also using it as a way to take action of like, what do I need to do today and what do I need to accomplish? And then when I take myself out of it, like, oh, my top three goals, and then like I'll like do a post-it note after and be like, okay, it feels so much better now. I
Oh,
can
the
tackle the
post-its
day.
changed the game. They really changed the game.
Yes, because we our jobs like we have like 20,000 different plates spinning at once, and like trying to figure out, and I'm sure other jobs do too. So it's like trying to figure out the most important tasks that I can finish today and knowing that that's enough. Like sometimes because of that overworking tendency, I'm like, but I still have 20 other things to do. And it's like, yeah, but I did five today and I need to shut down and I need to go do another
There was
side of the pie chart.
I think it was Nora Roberts. I think. And I think she was talking about specifically being a woman and having children and like all of the things
Mm,
that women. However, I think about what she said so many times, and if it's not Nora Roberts, someone correct me, but I'm pretty
hmm
sure it was. But she talked about having 20 different balls in the air and half of them are glass.
mm.
And you have to catch the glass ones, and the rubber ones can drop because they'll
Oh, I
bounce.
love
So it's
that.
like knowing what the glass ones are.
Mm,
And then identifying those. But that's hard to do when there are 20 balls in the air. Like
that's
you can't
true.
see which one's a glass. So you have to write it out and you have to figure out. And I'm pretty sure she was talking about like raising children and but also
Mhm.
having a career.
Yeah.
Um, but I thought it was like so simply profound that
Mm. I love
I
that.
think
And
about
it,
it.
because you have to like take the time, like you said, to like identify what's a glass ball. And sometimes a glass ball can become a rubber ball
Yeah,
for a
and vice
time. And
versa.
then, yeah, and like change throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout your season of life. But
Some of the glass balls are on fire. It's like crap.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, that does happen a lot too. But I love that. I love those tools.
I'm gonna fact check myself. I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it was Nora Roberts.
I would not be able to fact check you because that was the first time I have heard this information. So that is, I am just grateful for whoever said it, that being a great tool to use because I think I'm going to use that myself now.
Yeah. Yes, it is Nora Roberts. I was right.
Ding, ding,
The Nora Roberts
ding.
glass ball theory.
We are fact checkers on the spot.
Yeah. It was gonna bother me.
I knew, I know, I know. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that now your conscience is clean.
Yes, I feel much better. But it was
So,
definitely about parenting though.
but
But it works for everything.
yes, in that sense, like if you are a parent, if you're not a parent, I think I like the concept of like needing to kind of like identify because no one else is going to be able to identify. I mean, you might have like a boss or like another partner that helps you kind of like designate what is glass and what is a rubber ball, but at the end of the day, if you're the one that's juggling, you kind of like get to
You get to pick.
figure, yeah, mold that to
And
fit.
other people will make you try and think something is glass when it's
Mm.
rubber, but you get to pick, which
That's
is
very
important for
true.
us in our
That
career.
is very true. That is
But
very
also important for parents and important for
yes.
people pleasers or important for people
Mm,
who are like
hmm.
providers or caretakers that you get to pick. And I think once we take that control back,
Yeah. What's one thing you want to work on that you think will help you love yourself more?
I think I spend a lot of time on the mental health and the
Mhm.
mental fortitude and strength and all of that. And I would like to find balance,
Cheer, cheer. I'll drink.
find balance with the physical and like
Hmm.
feeling physically strong and physically
Yeah.
and at my best physically, which coming from my family has never been a priority, and I think I'd like to
Yeah.
make that a priority. And yeah, I think you feel good when you feel good, and you feel good when
Hmm.
you look good.
Hmm.
You do.
Yeah, and it's a very like tangible form of self-love. Like you can see the results, you can feel the results, and I think
Mm,
that's another form of taking action is prioritizing that as a glass ball and making
yep,
sure that sometimes our goals and self-love need to be visual so that we can feel outside of like the mental and emotional capacity. The third part of that triangle is the physical self, and that's as equally important
yep.
as the mental and
And
emotional side.
it really is all intertwined too.
Yeah.
Like when you sleep better, you feel
Hmm.
stronger, you feel
That's
mental
true.
clarity. When you drink more, like, yeah. So it's
Yeah.
all intertwined, which is deeply irritating, but it is all intertwined. Like, you can't catch a break nowhere.
Well, I would love to pull a card for you.
Sure.
If you'd let me. I'm gonna use the animal deck again. This has been a really popular one. I'll put the link again, but it's the animal. I feel like animals are just like easy for us to like relate to, or nature at least. Um, let's see. All the deer.
I don't know what that means.
So let me tell you what it means. So I think it really kind of summarizes everything you've been kind of like talking about prioritizing yourself. The deer's very nurturing, sort of like mother spirit of really prioritizing yourself so that you can fill your cup and then fill others' cups even further. And so really diving deep into sort of like that safe space for you, like in your sense, like prioritizing your going outside into nature, feeling like you want to kind of uh, feel that sort of like safeness, almost like creating a safe environment for yourself so that you can fill your cup and then continue to fill other people's cups. And you're also very supportive and nurturing in your own like creative and like career, but also like having that be sort of an example for others to follow as well. Um, does that resonate at all?
Yeah, I
Maybe
think
a little bit.
this is the
Uh,
perfect card for you to pull.
I have a knack at that. Let me see what it says here because the book is one of my favorites. Loving, intuitive, graceful. Um, we were just talking about parents. Uh, but during the first few days of like goals in general, like being fully present, nurturing, and calm, radiating a sense of grace and calming the room, and affecting others in that way, very receptive, compassionate, and nurturing. And if you're feeling out of balance, you can feel concerned or protective and kind of have like a little guard up. And to bring that back to balance, no joke. I just realized what was happening. Go into nature and spend time with children, which I think are two things that you're prioritizing, or like are in your orbit, and like you can learn a lot from the things that are already like in your environment that you've been
Yeah,
putting your cups into.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, do you want to send us off with some lovely life advice?
Okay, it's not my life advice.
It's okay.
However, I did just hear this quote and kind of goes back to what we're talking about, like discipline being the highest form of
Mm-hmm.
self-love. And I read this quote, which then I decided to make my little phone background so I don't forget it. But
Oh, nice.
everyone must choose one of two pains, the pain of discipline or the pain of disappointment,
Ooh.
which is or disappointment or regret. Either way, it irritates me. But like irritates me in the way that kind of fuels you. It's like it's right, and that's why it
Mm-hmm.
irritates me. But I think it's in everything. I think it applies to everything.
That's true, because and in a sense, like you, it's kind of like which wolf do you want to feed in that
Yeah.
sense? Like, do you want to go put all your energy into um disappointment, or do you want to put all your energy into like action?
Yeah.
Which can come with disappointment at times, but
Yeah,
um,
and you don't realize how pervasive that disappointment or regret can be in
yeah.
all aspects. Like if you don't hit your fitness goals, you might be
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable for a really long time. If you don't reach your finance goals, a different type of
Mm-hmm.
discomfort for a
That's
really long
true.
time. Um, if you're not prioritizing your mental health, another
Mm-hmm.
kind of, so I think it really applies to
Yeah.
everything. And what would you rather be? Would you rather be the discomfort or the regret or the disappointment of not being where you want to be or of
Yeah.
trying to get there? And I would rather trying to get there.
Oh, 100%. Even if it takes me a really long
Maybe
time.
5 years.
Yeah. I will negotiate that and say, like, I'll give you 65.
Okay. You're learning.
Not forever. Well, thank you so much, James. This was so great, and I hope anyone listening had another epiphany moment and is starting to think about what areas of life to balance. And I'm gonna go back to that YouTube video and I'll put it in the link and we'll
Yeah, I can find it
revisit where
too.
my misbalanced pie chart is currently at right now.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that lovely conversation. James is amazing, very action driven. And when that with that comes great responsibility of prioritizing balance and your self-love journey. Because when you take action, it oftentimes comes with a lot of determination, and like we were talking about, reaches a certain point where you do sort of have to uh, find ways to balance out that drive and determination to readjust the journey that you're on. And when I was thinking about, what letter I wanted to read, I went back into my archives as I usually do, per usual, and I found one that I wrote back in 2020, which at first I couldn't really remember, but then as I started reading it, this time I'm reading it first. As I started reading it, I realized that I think it had to do with I was thinking about quitting my job. At this time, I was still in the 9 to 5 paradigm matrix world. And the thoughts and ideas of like wanting to bet on myself and like start a new chapter in my life were starting to like, the seeds were slowly starting to be planted. And reading it, I think, in alignment with sort of like talking to James about how we met and that sort of like same work aspect, which is crazy to think about how almost like 5 years ago, just because I had that seed that I planted in me to like transition my life completely, work in a completely different industry. Now somehow I restarted my life, which just kind of like goes to show that you can hit the reset on and take action in your self-love journey at any point in your life. It's never too late for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the letter. It is called Dear Lovely, Accept the Challenge. Dear Lovely, accept the challenge. What challenge? The one you're either owning, ignoring, or maybe oblivious to. We all face challenges throughout our lives. We either see them and conquer them, choose to ignore them and never grow, or we are so preoccupied with everything else, we don't see the opportunity that's staring right in front of us. My call to you this month is that you face your challenge head on and accept it, however the challenge may present itself to you. If you've been tested lately, join the club. Whatever you're going through right now, it's not meant to last forever. Your challenge might follow you around like a dark cloud. I know some days are easier than others, but today I want to offer you my umbrella. You don't have to defeat this challenge alone. Find someone that can help you. It starts by calling a friend. You don't even need to ask for help right away. Just know that your battles do not need to be fought alone. You have allies. If a door has opened for you and you're having doubts, I've been there. You can't control the outcome, but my love, you gotta walk through the door in order to find out what will happen. I'd rather you walk through hundreds of doors and have them be slammed in your face than to never walk through a door and see what's on the other side. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy. Hard work takes time. If you're anything like me, though, you're fighting for that lovely life, right? Otherwise, why else are you here? It's time to go out there and actually find it. You've been practicing and preparing for this challenge for a long time, whether that's mentally, spiritually, or physically. It's time to put it all that hard work and practice into action, into your reality. You know what to do. If there's a task that you've been avoiding, go do it. The more we put things off, the longer it takes to grow from it. In the end, challenges are meant to help us. I don't want you to put so much pressure on completing it. I want you to take it a day by day and just commit to it. If it takes longer than you expected it to, that's growth too. So will you accept the challenge? Because I, for one, am rooting for you. Love, Monica. And that's the episode. I hope you're inspired to love yourself a little more than you did yesterday, and you're on your way to finding a lovely life you love. If you want to read more about my self love journey, head over to findalovelylife.com. Subscribe, rate, and share this podcast if you feel called to. Remember that your self love journey can start or restart at any point. There are no rules. Stay connected with us on social at Find a Lovely Life, or if you want to see more of Monica Life, you can find me at Lovely Monica, and that's spelled LOVELEEMONICAA. I'll say goodbye for now. Thanks for listening. Until next time.